The cafe went silent the moment it happened. A sharp yelp, a woman's gasp, and a cruel laugh that cut through the morning air. On the sidewalk outside the Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic, a rich teenager in designer clothes had just kicked a German Shepherd, right in front of its owner, a quiet woman in scrubs. What he didn't know was that the woman he mocked wasn't just any vet. She was a decorated Army veteran, and the dog he hurt had saved soldiers in war. But before she could speak, another voice cut through the tension. Deep, calm, dangerous. A Navy SEAL who had served beside her had seen everything, and that was the last mistake the spoiled boy ever made. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning mist rolled softly through the sleepy town of Port Blossom, wrapping its narrow streets in a calm, silvery hush. The wooden signs above the old shops creaked gently in the breeze. Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic, Main Street Cafe, Harper's Grocery, each carrying the charm of a town that hadn't changed much in decades. A faint smell of sea salt drifted in from the nearby coast, mingling with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt. Inside the small veterinary clinic, Dr. Emily Carter adjusted her stethoscope and smiled at the shepherd lying on the exam table. "Easy, Rex," she murmured. Her tone was gentle yet firm, the voice of someone who had seen both chaos and healing. Rex's ears perked up, his intelligent eyes following every motion of her hands. He wasn't just her dog. He was her partner, her protector, her family. Emily had served as a combat veterinarian in Afghanistan, treating wounded canines under the roar of helicopters and gunfire. Those memories still surfaced sometimes, the cries of soldiers, the loyalty of dogs who refused to leave their handlers behind. But here in Port Blossom, peace had finally found her. The clinic bell chimed as an elderly couple entered with a rescued kitten. Emily greeted them warmly, her smile genuine, her compassion effortless. Outside, the quiet rhythm of life continued. Shopkeepers sweeping their porches, kids riding bikes, the distant rumble of an approaching car echoing off the wet pavement. Rex stood near the window, his tail wagging faintly, his instincts always alert. To most, this was just another calm morning in a forgotten town. But to Rex, something about that approaching engine sound felt off. His ears twitched, his gaze sharpened. Trouble, though unseen, was on its way. The calm of Port Blossom shattered with the screech of tires. A sleek black sports car, the kind that didn't belong in a small coastal town, swerved into a parking space right in front of the clinic, splashing muddy water across the curb. Rex's low growl rumbled instantly. His instincts never lied. The driver's door opened and out stepped Chase Reynolds, 18, stylish and dripping with the kind of arrogance only money could buy. His sunglasses stayed on even in the cloudy morning, and his designer jacket looked wildly out of place among the locals in flannel and denim. He chewed gum lazily, glancing around with a smirk that said the world existed for his amusement. Emily looked up from the counter as the door swung open. The young man didn't wait for a greeting. "Hey, you the vet?" "I don't have all day," he snapped, tossing his car keys onto the reception desk. The keys clattered against the surface, leaving a faint scratch. Her tone remained calm. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "My dog needs shots or whatever," Chase said carelessly, pointing outside toward his car where a small French bulldog sat trembling in the passenger seat. "He's purebred, expensive. Don't screw it up." Emily's jaw tightened, but she stayed professional. "Of course. Please bring him in and we'll take a look." Chase rolled his eyes. "Can't you come out? It's wet." Before she could respond, Rex padded forward, standing protectively between Emily and the stranger. The German Shepherd's amber eyes locked onto Chase, his ears erect, his body tense. Chase chuckled. "What's with the mutt? You let that thing roam around in here?" Emily's eyes flickered, steady, calm, but with the quiet authority of a soldier. "That thing is a retired service dog. He's trained to protect." Chase smirked, leaning closer. "Protect? From what? Me?" Rex's growl deepened. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying a warning through the streets. The peace that Port Blossom cherished was about to be broken, one arrogant act at a time. The air inside the clinic thickened with tension. Emily could sense Rex's unease, his sharp eyes following every twitch of Chase's movement. The young man strutted around like he owned the place, his expensive shoes leaving wet prints across the freshly mopped floor. He tapped his phone impatiently, not even glancing at the animal whimpering in his car. "Can we hurry this up?" Chase muttered. "I've got better things to do than wait in some backwater vet shop." Emily inhaled slowly, keeping her composure. "Sir, I just finished an appointment. I'll see your dog next." That single word, "sir," made him laugh. "You talk to everyone like you're in the army or something?" His smirk widened. "Oh, right, you were. Heard about you. The town's war hero playing doctor for strays." The insult landed like a slap, but Emily didn't flinch. Her voice stayed calm, firm. "I help whoever walks through that door. Even spoiled dogs and their owners." Rex stepped forward, a deep growl rolling in his throat. His tail lowered, muscles tightening as if he could feel Emily's quiet hurt. Chase sneered down at him. "What's he gonna do? Saluteme?" The people in the waiting area shifted uncomfortably. One old man whispered, "That's Emily Carter. She served overseas." But Chase didn't care. He was feeding off attention. He bent slightly, taunting. "You think being a soldier makes you special? My dad could buy this whole dump if he wanted." Emily straightened, her gaze steady and unshaken. "Money can't buy respect, Chase. You'll learn that one day." Rex's low growl filled the silence again, vibrating through the small room. Chase rolled his eyes, but for the first time a flicker of unease crossed his face. And then, he took one arrogant step too close. Rex's body stiffened. His amber eyes locked on Chase like a loaded spring. Emily saw it instantly, the shift in his posture, the slight lift of his hackles. He was warning the boy without a sound. Chase, oblivious to the danger, grinned and stepped even closer, the air thick with his arrogance. "What's wrong, mutt? Don't like rich people?" He jeered, leaning down just enough to make his mockery sting. Rex let out a sharp bark, the kind that made the walls tremble. The sound startled everyone in the clinic. Even Chase flinched, his confidence faltering for a heartbeat. But instead of backing off, he did the unthinkable. He raised his foot and kicked. The impact echoed through the small room like a gunshot. Rex yelped and stumbled backward, a sharp cry of pain breaking the stunned silence. Emily's heart seized. "Rex!" she shouted, rushing forward. The world blurred around her as she knelt beside her partner, her trembling hands checking his side. Rex whined softly, his gaze fixed on her, loyal even through the pain. Chase froze, realizing the gravity of what he'd done, but pride overpowered guilt. "It was an accident," he muttered defensively. "He came at me." Emily rose slowly, her expression no longer calm but cold, commanding. The face of a soldier who had seen too much cruelty to let it pass. "You kicked a service dog," she said, her voice low but steady. "That's not an accident. That's cowardice." The entire waiting room had gone silent. Even the kitten in its carrier stopped meowing. Every eye was on Chase. Someone pulled out a phone and began recording. Rex, still trembling, struggled to his feet and stood between Emily and the boy again, teeth bared just enough to make his warning clear. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Inside, the storm had already begun. The sound of Rex's yelp seemed to hang in the air long after it ended. For a few seconds, no one moved. Only the hum of the clinic lights filled the silence. Then whispers started rippling through the small crowd. Phones lifted. Cameras flashed. What had begun as a routine morning had turned into a scene no one could ignore. Emily knelt beside Rex, her voice trembling with worry. "Easy, boy. You're okay. I'm here." She gently ran her hands along his ribs. The dog winced but stayed on his feet, refusing to show weakness. His loyalty outshone his pain. Across the room, Chase's smirk faltered as the weight of public eyes pressed down on him. "I said it was an accident," he barked, trying to sound confident. But it was too late. His words couldn't drown out the truth that every witness had just seen. An older woman stepped forward, voice trembling with outrage. "You kicked that dog. Shame on you." "Yeah," muttered another man, holding up his phone. "Whole town's gonna see this kid." Chase's arrogance began to crumble, but anger replaced remorse. "You don't know who I am," he snapped. "My dad won't stop the truth from spreading," Emily interrupted, rising to her feet. Her eyes were calm but piercing. "You hurt an animal who served his country." From the edge of the crowd, a deep voice cut through the tension. "And that," the man said, stepping forward, is something I don't let slide. Heads turned. Standing in the doorway was Commander Daniel Hayes. Broad-shouldered, weathered by years of service, his Navy SEAL insignia faintly visible on his jacket. His gaze swept over the scene, Emily's trembling hand on Rex, the arrogant teen, the fearful silence. Emily froze for a moment. Recognition flashed in her eyes. Daniel met her gaze and gave a small nod, the kind only soldiers understand, one that said, "You're not alone anymore." The crowd stepped back instinctively. Trouble had met its reckoning. For a heartbeat, time froze. The echo of Rex's yelp lingered like a wound across the room. Then the tension shattered. People gasped, chairs scraped, and phones came up. Every witness in the small clinic knew they had just seen something cruel. The once peaceful morning now buzzed with anger and disbelief. Emily knelt by Rex, her hands trembling as she checked his side. "Easy, boy." "It's okay," she whispered, her voice tight with pain. Rex whimpered softly but stayed standing, his loyalty unbroken.
Emily's chest ached. She'd seen soldiers fall in war, but seeing her companion hurt like this cut deeper than any battlefield wound. "You kicked him!"
shouted a woman from the corner, holding her phone high. "I recorded the whole thing." Chase's arrogance flickered, replaced by panic. He growled first. It was self-defense, he stammered, stepping back as murmurs rose around him. But the crowd wasn't buying it. A few people moved closer, glaring at him with disgust. Emily stood slowly, her voice steady but icy. "Self-defense?" she repeated. "He's a retired K-9 who's protected more lives than you'll ever understand." Chase rolled his eyes, trying to reclaim control. "He's just a dog. You people are acting crazy." The words landed like poison. Someone muttered, "That dog has more honor than you." The glass door swung open again, letting in a gust of cold air. A tall man stepped inside, his boots heavy, his expression unreadable. The murmurs died instantly. His broad shoulders and calm authority filled the room before he even spoke. "That's enough," he said quietly. His tone carried weight, a command wrapped in restraint. Emily looked up and recognition flashed in her eyes. Commander Daniel Hayes, a man she once knew from war. A protector, a brother in arms. Rex's tail moved faintly. The soldier had arrived. The room went still as the tall man stepped through the doorway. His boots left faint prints on the tiled floor, his posture calm yet commanding. Commander Daniel Hayes had the quiet authority of someone who had seen chaos and learned to master it. His eyes scanned the scene. Emily standing protectively beside Rex, the trembling crowd, and the arrogant teen whose confidence had already begun to crack. "Is there a problem here?" Daniel's voice was low, controlled, but it carried the unmistakable tone of command. Chase scoffed, trying to mask his unease. "Yeah, there's a problem. This crazy vet let her mutt attack me." Daniel's gaze hardened. "That mutt is a decorated service dog," he said. "And that woman saved soldiers' lives while you were still learning to drive." The words hit Chase like a slap, but he forced a smirk. "Oh great, another wannabe hero. What are you, her guard dog?" Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. "No, but I do have a history of dealing with bullies." The crowd shifted, sensing the power dynamic had changed. Emily exhaled slowly, relief and recognition flooding her face. "Daniel Hayes," she murmured, voice soft but steady. "Didn't think I'd see you again." He gave her a small, knowing nod. "Didn't think I'd have to step in to protect you either." Chase's voice rose defensively. "You don't scare me, old man." Daniel took one slow step forward. "That's fine," he said evenly. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to teach you respect." For a long moment, silence filled the clinic, thick, tense, unbroken. Chase's hand twitched toward his phone, but Daniel's gaze froze him in place. There was something unshakable about the man's calm, like a storm contained behind steady eyes. "Apologize to her," Daniel said simply. Chase laughed nervously, glancing at his friends outside the window. "You can't tell me what to—" Before he could finish, Daniel leaned in, voice barely above a whisper but sharper than a blade. "Son, I'm not telling you. I'm giving you a chance." Rex stood beside Daniel now, tail stiff, eyes fixed on the bully. For the first time, Chase looked uncertain, and for the first time he realized he wasn't the one in control anymore. The tension thickened until it felt like the air itself could shatter. Chase's jaw tightened as he glanced out the clinic window. His friends were still outside, phones pointed toward the glass, laughing and egging him on. He couldn't back down now, not in front of them. pride overpowered common sense, he forced a smirk. You think you're some kind of hero, huh? What? Because you've got a fancy badge and some sad story from the army? His tone was dripping with mockery, but his voice trembled just enough for Daniel to catch it. Daniel didn't move. I don't need a badge, he said calmly. Just a spine. Laughter erupted from outside and Chase puffed up his chest. You don't scare me, he sneered, stepping forward until he was nearly chest to chest with Daniel. You're just another washed-up soldier trying to feel important. Rex growled, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Daniel's eyes didn't leave Chase's face. You're right about one thing, he said quietly. I am a soldier, but I don't fight for pride. I fight to protect people from punks who think cruelty is power. The words landed like a punch. Chase's fake confidence cracked and anger rushed in to fill the space. He shoved Daniel's shoulder. Don't talk down to me. Before anyone could react, Daniel moved, a blur of precision. He didn't strike, didn't harm, just caught Chase's wrist mid-motion and twisted it gently but firmly, forcing him to stop. The teenager froze, pain flashing across his face. Daniel leaned in, voice steady as stone. You don't touch me. You don't touch her. And you never ever hurt an animal again. The room fell utterly silent. Even Chase's friends outside stopped recording. Emily's heart pounded as she realized this wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a lesson being written in real time, and Chase Reynolds was about to learn it the hard way. For a brief moment, the world around Emily seemed to fade, the sterile white walls of the clinic melting into the dust and chaos of Afghanistan, years earlier. The echoes of Chase's defiance blurred into a haunting memory of explosions, barking canines, and desperate cries for help. The memory began with a sandstorm. Emily crouched behind a military vehicle, her hands steady as she tended to a wounded German shepherd named Ace. Gunfire rattled in the distance, but she didn't flinch. Sweat and dust streaked her face, her heart pounding with purpose. Stay with me, buddy, she whispered, pressing a bandage against the dog's bleeding flank. Then, another explosion. She ducked as debris rained down, shielding the dog with her body. That's when Commander Daniel Hayes appeared, moving through the chaos like a storm of calm precision. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with dirt, but his voice remained solid. Doc Carter, you're gonna get yourself killed. Emily looked up, defiant even then. Not leaving him behind? Daniel covered her position, firing in controlled bursts until reinforcements arrived. Together they carried Ace to safety, refusing to abandon the wounded K9 under fire. That moment forged something unspoken between them, a bond of trust built not from words but from survival. Later, in the quiet of a makeshift field tent, Daniel handed her a canteen. You've got guts, he said. She smiled faintly. No, just duty. When the flashback faded, Emily found herself back in the clinic, Rex's steady breathing beside her, Daniel standing tall before Chase. She blinked hard, realizing how much time had passed, yet how little had changed. Daniel turned slightly, meeting her eyes for a split second. That same soldier's steadiness was there, the same man who once shielded her from chaos. And now, once again, he stood between her and danger. Chase yanked his wrist free and stumbled back, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. The crowd's silence weighed heavy, their phones still raised, but their expressions now filled with judgment rather than curiosity. His friends outside pressed against the glass, filming eagerly, feeding his pride like gasoline to a flame. He couldn't look weak, not now. You think you can touch me? Chase shouted, his voice cracking. My dad will have you arrested for assault. Daniel didn't blink. Then call him, he said evenly. Tell him you tried to hurt a veteran's dog and got stopped before you did worse. Laughter rippled quietly through the crowd. That only fueled Chase's rage. His hand went to his pocket, fumbling until he pulled out a small folding knife, its metallic click slicing through the air like a threat. Gasps erupted around the room. Emily's heart stopped. Chase, don't! She cried, stepping forward instinctively. But Daniel raised a hand, signaling her to stay back. His eyes stayed locked on the boy, calm and unreadable. You don't want to do that, he said softly. You're already drowning in bad choices. Don't let this be the one that ruins your life. Chase hesitated, hand shaking slightly, but pride held him captive. You think you can tell me what to do? Daniel took one slow, steady step forward. No, he replied. but I can show you what happens when someone refuses to listen. Before Chase could react, Daniel moved with trained precision, swift, fluid, and controlled. In one motion, he disarmed the teen, the knife clattering harmlessly to the floor. He caught Chase by the arm, turned him gently but firmly, and pinned him against the counter, not in aggression but restraint. "Look at me," Daniel ordered. Chase's breath came in short bursts, fear flickering in his eyes for the first time. "This is strength," Daniel said quietly. "Not the kind that hurts, but the kind that protects." The words cut deeper than any blow. Around them, the crowd remained silent, spellbound. Rex barked once, sharp and decisive, like a gavel striking justice. And as Daniel released the trembling boy, the phones kept rolling. The lesson was now immortal. The shrill sound of sirens cut through the heavy silence, their echo bouncing off the narrow streets of Port Blossom. Red and blue lights flashed through the clinic windows as two police cruisers pulled up outside. The crowd parted instantly, murmuring as uniformed officers hurried in, hands on their belts, eyes darting between Daniel, Emily, and the shaken teen. Chase straightened his clothes, trying to recover what little pride he had left. "Finally," he shouted, pointing toward Daniel. "That man assaulted me. He attacked me for no reason." Daniel didn't respond. He simply stepped back, arms raised in calm surrender, his expression steady. Emily's heart pounded, but she trusted the truth, and the dozens of witnesses who had seen everything unfold. One officer, Sergeant Miller, turned to the onlookers. "Did anyone see what happened?" Phones lifted instantly. "We all did," said a woman firmly. "The kid kicked her dog." The veteran stepped in. The sergeant's gaze hardened as he turned toward Chase. "Is that true, son?" Chase hesitated, sweat glistening at his temple. "No, he twisted my arm, After you pulled a knife," Daniel said quietly. His tone wasn't angry. It was matter of fact. The officers exchanged glances. One crouched, picking up the folded knife from the floor. The metallic click of it locking shut echoed in the tense room. Sergeant Miller sighed, turning back to Daniel. "Commander Hayes, right? We served at the same base once." "I know your record," Daniel nodded once. "Just doing what needed to be done." Miller looked between Emily and Rex, then back at Chase. "Then I'd say justice already found you first." The sirens outside faded into the distance, but inside, the storm had finally met order. The flashing lights outside the clinic finally dimmed as the officers wrapped up their reports. The crowd had begun to thin, though a few stayed, whispering about what they had just witnessed. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and tension, heavy with everything that had just unfolded. Chase sat slouched on a bench, his hands shaking slightly. The weight of embarrassment pressed down on him harder than any punishment could. For the first time, the swagger was gone. When his father's black SUV screeched to a halt outside, Chase's shoulders tensed again. Richard Reynolds, a tall man in an expensive suit, stormed into the clinic. His voice was sharp and commanding. "Who dared to lay a hand on my son?" Daniel turned calmly. "Your son kicked a service dog and threatened people with a knife," he said evenly. "He's lucky I laid a hand on him at all." Richard's face twisted with outrage. "Do you know who I am? I could shut this whole place down." Emily stepped forward, eyes unwavering. "And I could remind you that money doesn't erase cruelty." Her tone silenced the room. Even Richard hesitated for a heartbeat. Then he exhaled sharply and reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a thick envelope. "Let's end this quietly. For everyone's sake." Emily's expression hardened. "You want to pay off what your son did?" She stepped closer, voice low but powerful. "Money can't heal the wound of cruelty or buy back respect." Daniel crossed his arms. "Maybe instead of writing checks, you should teach him what honor means." Chase's eyes lowered, shame flickering through his bravado. His father scoffed but said nothing. The envelope hung in his hand, heavy and useless. Emily turned away, gently stroking Rex's fur. "We're done here." And for the first time, Chase realized he couldn't buy forgiveness. He had to earn it. By the next morning, the story had spread through Port Blossom like wildfire. Videos of the confrontation flooded social media, clips of the rich teen kicking a service dog, the Navy SEAL stepping in, and Emily's calm defiance against money and arrogance. What had begun as humiliation turned into a wave of compassion. Cars lined up outside Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic. Locals came not out of curiosity but gratitude. Farmers brought baskets of vegetables, children brought homemade cards, and veterans arrived one by one, shaking Emily's hand in silent respect. The once quiet clinic buzzed with warmth. "Doc Carter," said one old Marine, his voice thick with emotion, "you reminded this town what courage really looks like." Emily smiled softly, humbled by the attention. "It wasn't just me," she said, glancing down at Rex, who sat proudly by her side. "It was him, too," Rex barked once, as if acknowledging his share of the praise. The crowd laughed, their spirits lifted. Someone slipped a donation envelope onto the counter. Others followed, turning her small clinic into a symbol of kindness and unity. Outside, even Chase's friends stopped by quietly, guilt written across their faces. They didn't record this time. They simply left flowers by the door, a silent apology. The local news called Emily a hero, but she didn't see it that way. She looked at Rex, at Daniel, at the townspeople who had rallied together, and she saw something far deeper than heroism. She saw a community learning to protect what truly mattered: loyalty, kindness, and honor. And as the sun dipped behind the hills, Port Blossom felt changed, stronger, wiser, united by a lesson no one would forget. Weeks slipped by, and the fiery storm that had consumed Port Blossom slowly settled into quiet ripples of change. The viral video had done more than shame a bully. It had exposed a town's conscience. But amidst all the praise and peace, Chase Reynolds couldn't shake the guilt that haunted him. Every time he passed the clinic, he saw the image of Rex's pained eyes flash before him. One overcast afternoon, a soft knock echoed against the clinic door. Emily looked up from her paperwork. Standing outside, awkward and alone, was Chase. No camera crew, no designer clothes, just a boy in a plain sweatshirt clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers. Rex noticed him first. His ears perked up, body alert, but there was no growl this time. Only silence, curious and watchful. Chase hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Carter, I wanted to say I'm sorry." Emily studied him for a long moment, seeing something different in his eyes. No arrogance, no bravado, just shame and the faint spark of sincerity. "You hurt a dog who trusted humans," she said softly.
"Why now?"
He swallowed hard. "Because I finally get it," he murmured. "That dog wasn't dangerous. I was." Rex stepped closer, his amber gaze fixed on Chase. The boy held his breath as the German shepherd stopped just inches away, tail still, eyes steady. Then slowly, Rex lowered his head and pressed it against Chase's leg. Tears welled in Chase's eyes.
"Does this mean he forgives me?"
Emily smiled faintly. "Maybe he does. But forgiveness isn't a word. It's what you do next." Chase nodded, setting the flowers on the counter. "Then let me help, however I can." From that day, the boy who once hurt a hero began learning from one. And for the first time in his life, Chase felt something richer than wealth: redemption. The days grew longer, and the chill of early spring faded into warmth. The Port Blossom Clinic was busier than ever. Patients, volunteers, and laughter filled its walls. Among the visitors, one figure always stood out quietly: Commander Daniel Hayes. He'd stayed in town longer than he planned, helping fix fences, walking Rex when Emily worked late, and talking to the local kids about discipline and courage. But deep down, Emily knew. Men like Daniel never stayed still for long. One crisp morning, he arrived in his navy jacket, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Emily looked up from her desk and froze. "Leaving already?" she asked, her voice soft but heavy with meaning. Daniel nodded, his gaze calm. "There's another training mission out west. They need someone with experience," she smiled faintly. "They always do." He chuckled, then crouched beside Rex, scratching behind his ear. "Take care of her, buddy," he murmured. The dog wagged his tail, sensing the farewell. Emily stepped closer. "You didn't just protect us, Daniel," she said quietly. "You reminded this town what honor looks like." He gave a small smile. "You didn't need reminding, Emily. You were already living it." For a moment, the two veterans stood in silence. No medals, no uniforms, just respect forged through shared battles. Daniel gave a final salute, not the rigid kind from the field, but one of friendship and gratitude. As he walked away, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the quiet street. Emily whispered to herself, "Once a protector, always a protector." And Rex, watching Daniel disappear into the horizon, let out one soft bark, as if saying goodbye to a brother in arms. The weeks that followed carried a quiet peace through Port Blossom, the kind that settles after a storm. The clinic had become more than just a place for healing animals. It had become a symbol of redemption. The once wounded town now pulsed with kindness, stitched together by courage, forgiveness, and the lessons of one unforgettable day. Emily stood by the clinic window one golden afternoon, sunlight spilling across the wooden floor. She watched as Rex played outside with a group of laughing children, his tail swishing proudly, his spirit unbroken. Beside him, Chase knelt with a gentle smile, bandaging the paw of a stray dog he'd found on the road. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from care. He had changed. The arrogant boy who once kicked a dog now spent his weekends volunteering at the same clinic he had once disrespected. Daniel's presence lingered like a promise. Though he had left town, his influence remained. A week after his departure, a letter arrived in a plain envelope, its handwriting firm and neat. Emily unfolded it slowly. "Doc, tell the town I'm proud of them. Tell the kid that every man stumbles, but only the brave learn to stand again. And tell Rex, his job's not done yet. The world still needs protectors like him." Emily smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. She folded the letter carefully and placed it beside Rex's service medals on the shelf. "You heard him," she whispered to Rex. "Still got work to do." As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Emily stepped outside. The gentle breeze carried laughter, the bark of her loyal companion, and the heartbeat of a town forever changed. She looked straight into the camera, her tone calm yet powerful.